Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing something a little different. I don't usually do this kind of video because this is a reading channel and not a writing channel. But I have been seeing some writing advice floating around on the internet and Twitter that doesn't seem to take into account those of us writers who are parents. So here are my writing tips for parents, specifically parents with young children. Trying to find time to write amongst parental obligations, working full-time, and other hobbies is hard, but I wanted to provide some kind of mindset advice and some practical tips too to help everyone out. I hope it is helpful. Oh, and these tips can apply to non-parents as well too, of course. I just find that there is a lot of kind of, to be a good writer, you have to do these things, and a lot of this just, honestly, it isn't practical for anybody, really. So, let's do this. 1. You don't have to write every day to be a real writer. Wow, mind-blowing, right? Anyone who says you have to write every day to be successful or a real writer probably has too much time on their hands. Some days you just can't write every day. And even before I had kids, sure, I had more time and energy to write every day, most of the time. But did I? No. I did not. I finished work, I came home, I had dinner, walked the dogs, worked out, I played video games, I saw my friends, sometimes I played sports, I read books. I did a lot of stuff back, a lot of stuff. Anyway, sometimes I wrote, sometimes I didn't. Does that make me any less of a serious writer than those who force themselves to write every day? No. Being a writer is not being a martyr, which is something we seem to think we need to be. We don't. You write when you have the time and the mindset and the motivation. Sometimes you do have to kind of force yourself to have that motivation, and I'm going to talk about that in some of the later tips, but you should no means feel bad if you can only write a couple days a week. I only get maybe 2 nights, and by 2 nights I mean 2 hours, so 4 hours total a week to write, because my kids go to bed late, I have to go to bed, I have things to do. Yeah. Number 2, don't put writing first. Especially when your kids are really little and need your attention, don't feel guilty about not writing when you're spending time with your kids. You'll be writing for the rest of your life. And while it's an important hobby and vital to your self-care, to carve some time out of parenting to do it, your kids won't be kids forever. Spend time with them too, and don't worry about the book not being written while you're sitting on the floor playing Legos. 3. Drop the writer's guilt. So what if someone else who has an extra 3 hours a night and doesn't have to drive kids to hockey practice on Saturday mornings has written more than you that month or that year? So what? It's not a race. Writing faster doesn't necessarily mean your writing is better. Writers are not competing with one another. Sure, you want someone to buy your book over theirs, but that's not writing. That's marketing. And yes, writing takes practice, but you rarely see people who want to learn to play the oboe feeling like they're failures because it takes them longer than someone else to learn to play. Okay, well, I don't know why we have to put writing in this elevated category. 4, have a set time to write. Your brain will start associating that time with writing, and it's easier to fall into it that way. For me, that's Wednesday nights for sure, and usually Mondays and sometimes Thursday nights too. And make sure your partner, if you have one, knows this is your writing time, and it's not going to be doing chores time or DIY time or whatever. Then they can have hobby time too. It's great to have this time to yourself, and then once, they start to accept that this is your writing time, then it'll always be your writing time, and it'll be easy to kind of keep it that way. Number 5, your situation is not the same as other parents. Well, writing this, I obviously kind of based it on my own situation, but I, acknowledge that some of these tips might not work for you, and that's fine. Anyway, I wrote most of my space opera trilogy, definitely books 2 and 3, when I was on maternity leave. How? Because 1, I'm in Canada and my maternity leave is a year. 2, because my eldest daughter was in daycare, and the second kid would only sleep on me, on my chest. So I wrote when she was on my chest. I sat here and I typed, and she'd sit on my chest. I also wrote when both the kids napped on the weekends. This doesn't work for everyone, though. Some people don't have supportive parents. They're more tired and need this time for sleeping. I have this ability to just go without sleep. They aren't as laissez-faire as me about parenting, perhaps, or maybe they just don't want to write when they're on maternity leave. That's fine, too. Parents who don't write on parental leave are not a failure. Far from it. Having a baby is hard, especially your first baby. I barely wrote when I had my first because I was overwhelmed with, what I had to do. My second kid was just a little easier, and it was also COVID when I had her, so I wasn't taking her to the gym 3 days a week. I wasn't seeing other friends that were on leave, and I wasn't doing the library program with her, so I was home more. I had more time. Number 6, try plotting. I was a definite pantser before my space opera trilogy, but I found plotting works better for me now, given my the less time, given I have less time to write. This might not work for you, and that's fine, but my suggestion here is to try other approaches to writing now that your life is different. Maybe plotting a few chapters ahead works, or maybe writing in out of chronological order works for you. Just try different things if you're in like a slump. Number 7, remember that all writing is a success story because you did it. Don't compare yourselves to others regardless of the situation. Kids or no kids, traditionally published or self-published, someone who gets a book deal isn't necessarily a better writer than you. It's true. It's true. That's the truth. Number 8, learn to write with distractions. I used to need an entire afternoon, a can of pop or a cup of coffee and atmospheric music to write. Now I can write while Paw Patrol or Trolls 2 are blaring in the background. Obviously, don't ignore your kids. See tip number 2. But if they are having a snack and watching a show for an hour, take that time to write a bit. And if you can get like a small computer, like a Chromebook or something, so you can be in the same room to answer questions or help them if they need it, but then still do your own thing, because, individual play for kids is also an important thing to do. That's even better. Number 9, listen to audiobooks. I am I'm a very strong proponent that if you want to be a good writer, you need to read to learn new techniques and approaches. So if you're taking the baby on a walk in the stroller, skip the podcast or music and go for an audiobook instead. Number 10, write for you. Write the story that you want to read and want to write. Don't worry about marketing or what agents on Twitter are saying. Chances are, if you're watching my list here, you're not the writer who's pumping out a book a month. So trying to bend your story to fit with trends or the market is not going to motivate you, and it's not going to create the story that you want. Not all books are bestsellers or will get a traditionally published deal. I self-published because I wanted to control the trajectory of my books, not because I couldn't get self-published. I didn't even try. Self-publishing is not a last resort, but even if it is a last resort for you, that doesn't devalue your story in the slightest or the work you've put into it. All stories are valid stories. Some just need an editor's help to make them shine. So yeah, those are my tips. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips for, parents of young children that want to keep writing but are having trouble kind of finding the motivation or the time. Let me know if these tips are helpful for, other people that have kind of limited time in their life, things like that. I definitely was skewing this towards parents because it was something that I found was kind of lacking in advice. But, obviously you can apply these tips to anybody. So yeah, I hope that's helpful, and right on, dudes.